Hey, fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. I'm Michael Pachter, and I am your talent, but unpaid talent. But if you're watching real time, it's because you are a SIFTD patron on Patreon and or you are a YouTube subscriber. So thank you, Shane, thanks to you for supporting the site and for keeping him in gasoline so he can drive to my home. If you are watching this a week late, it's because you're not paying in any way. But no matter what, whether you're paying or not, you can link your Twitch Prime account to your Amazon Prime account, and we will get paid, or Shane will get paid. The instructions are in the show description below, so check that out. And try to remember to renew that because it lapses after a month or so. It costs you nothing, so do it. It's free. It helps us out, so thank you.
This episode of Pachter Factor is brought to you by DeShazer Ryan Realty. Right now, Doug DeShazer has beautiful lots available adjacent to Koocanusa Lake in northwest Montana. Pull up your RV and access the hookups, or build your own construction. Either way, you have access to world-class fishing, hunting, boating, swimming, biking, hiking, and the internet. No matter where you're looking to buy, make Doug DeShazer your real estate consultant at 406-291-1643. That's Doug DeShazer at 406-291-1643.
All right, our question today from SIFTD from V. Nunes. During the Activision Blizzard acquisition hearings, a lot of previously confidential information became public through disclosure of emails and other documents. A lot of the information was unrelated to the acquisition. Who decides what's redacted from those documents? Shouldn't uninvolved companies be protected from disclosures like this? The redactions are typically at the request of the parties who divulge the documents. And so Sony and Microsoft in particular, and Activision are the ones who most of the documents came from. They're going to say, oh, we don't want people to know the terms of the Call of Duty license or something. And so it might block out the number of years or the amount per year or the number of units or whatever. But it's up to the guy who provided the documents to protect the interests of the parties mentioned in the documents. So if the emails came from Microsoft, they're responsible for the redactions. If the emails came from Activision, they're responsible for the redactions. Should uninvolved companies be protected? I suppose, but if they're not a party to the email or the document, then they don't have any say in it. And if, let's pretend that Microsoft provided a document and it mentioned the AMD, chipset, and specifically said what AMD sold them for and how many they sold and all that, which hurts AMD because they don't want that out. Well, AMD can decide if they want to do business with Microsoft in the future because Microsoft didn't protect their interests. This happens all the time. There are unintended, unredacted releases in litigation all the time. And I actually remember people saying, oh, all the terms of Call of Duty contract were released. Well, they were. It happens all the time. So people aren't perfect at redaction, and should they be protected? Yes. Are they protected? No. And their only recourse is to sue the person who revealed the information if they had a non-disclosure arrangement. I don't know if they did or not. Like what would happen if somebody leaked out something that really doesn't matter, like Bird Box on Netflix had 44 million views? Would that change anybody's view of what Netflix is worth? No. Would that make Sandra Bullock happy? Probably. And that actually is public. But what if somebody leaked out one data point? Who cares? So I mean, let's not get too caught up in what's confidential and what's not confidential. But leaking out, Jim Ryan made $10 million last year. That might embarrass him, or like we're getting this right now, all the executives in the media companies that are unwilling to settle with the writers and actors, and their salaries are known because it's public information. So the writers are making a big deal about how much they make. I think if those companies were to release what they paid the writers, it would embarrass the writers because they're not making very much. So again, the disclosure can be embarrassing both ways. It can embarrass the greedy guy who makes too much and is pleading poverty, and it can embarrass the poor guy who's not making very much at all and is giving his work away for free. But just the way litigation works. When you file a lawsuit, that is public record, and the redaction is up to the party to preserve its own confidentiality. There's something in the U.S. government called Freedom of Information Act. You can pretty much discover anything that goes on in federal government. It's all discoverable. You have to get the government turned over. They call that FOIA, Freedom of Information Act FOIA request, but they do. And there's lots of people embarrassed by it. That's how we found out about gold-plated toilet seats on Navy ships. That there were crazy things like $600 hammers that got discovered from people finding that out. Did the company charging $600 for a hammer get embarrassed by that? Yeah, because they're overcharging the government. But look, I think this stuff's all. I think there's a famous saying, and I wish I knew who said it. I don't know who it was. George Washington. It was some founding father. It was somebody. It wasn't founding father. It's not that old. That sunlight is the best antiseptic. That you kill more germs by revealing what's going on, and bad stuff doesn't happen if everybody sees it happening. So I'm okay with it, but again, if it embarrassed somebody, I'm sorry.
What if you're in charge of the redactions and there's something embarrassing for another company in the documents?
Embarrassing.
And you don't tell. So let's say it's AMD, and Microsoft doesn't tell AMD, "Hey, we have these documents with some bad stuff in them," and then doesn't redact them, and it gets exposed publicly. Then can AMD sue Microsoft?
Yeah, of course they can.
Okay.
If they can prove that they were damaged, and if they can prove that Microsoft had no right to reveal, sure. And if Microsoft voluntarily just filed the documents to back up their case. If the court subpoenaed the documents, then AMD should have been notified. Then it's up to them to step in and make sure that it's not disclosed to the public. But if Microsoft voluntarily brought it in to support their legal argument, that's not AMD's fault, and they weren't compelled to do it, then AMD has a right to sue if they're harmed. I doubt that they can really prove they were harmed. I mean, what's the harm? Embarrassment? It doesn't.
Well, if their stock goes down the next day.
But why would it go down?
Well, if there's something embarrassing in the documents.
Well, it's all past tense, and it all happened.
It shows you how they operate, and you may not have faith in them after that.
That's highly unlikely.
Well, again, if the stock goes down the next day.
It didn't, though. So if it did,
this is all. No, this
no, right.
This
Like
is
I
all
said,
an example.
Yeah, if it was something like AMD puts its chipsets together with spit and Band-Aids,
right,
and we find out that they're inferior, yes, of course. But again, then they're committing a fraud, and they deserve to go down. Thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. If you're a Patreon patron or a YouTube subscriber, we appreciate your patronage, and you're getting the show real time. If you are watching a week late on YouTube, that's because you didn't do those first two things. But all of you, please try to remember to link your Twitch Prime account to your Amazon Prime account. There are instructions in the screen below. Below the screen, sorry. Click on that and figure it out, because we get paid, our Shane gets paid, and you got to renew that every month or so. So just since I'm reminding you now, please remember to do that. I will see you guys next week. Thanks, fellow babies, for joining us on Pachter Factor.